Well, welcome back to the Tradie Wife podcast. God, that's a mouthful. I really feel like we need to just abbreviate it somehow, but then I'm sure I'd stumble over it. I am joined today by someone we've spoken to a couple of times over on the Tradies in Business podcast. If you haven't listened there, please go over and search up today's guest. Helen has joined us, I think, a couple of times, Helen, over on Tradies in Business podcast, talking about terms and conditions and some other legal parameters for trade business owners. But let me tell you a little bit about Helen first. Helen is an experienced business lawyer who is passionate about helping business owners avoid unnecessary risk by providing tailored commercial legal advice, which is all an incredibly professional, fancy way of saying if you need help in your business, Helen and her team have your back. Welcome to the podcast, Helen.
I love that. I'm taking that. I think you pay a fortune getting someone to write that for you, and you've just nailed it.
Just like that. Well, your website did help me a little bit, so we've taken both and then added a liberty. But I think for me, business is really confusing, and having a team of people in your back corner, and we talk about this, and we have done previously, it's really important to have people proactively and not far, far too late. But before we get too bogged down in the why we need to have the right professionals in our corner, Helen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be Rise Legal?
Oh, wow. Yes. So, lawyer, obviously, from England. I was brought over by one of the top law firms who brought me over to Perth to work with them to help them buy Little Creatures Brewing. Next door, the Harbourside Hotel came over to help them buy that. And whilst I was at the big firm, I was helping, the big construction companies, and I was helping state governments and big developers like Mirvac, Multiplex, and then we had the, John Holland and those kind of people. And I was advising their in-house legal team, who were then advising, very, very savvy board. And I kind of felt like, my advice was probably worth about 0.00% of what was actually happening in the whole transaction, and where the real value would be for me to be advising those poor people at the very bottom of the chain who were entering into subcontracts with these great big, and we were tailoring the big project documents. Mm-hmm. So I kind of had a change of heart and went, those are the people who need the help, and they actually need help before they need it. So before they realize there's a problem and, all these nasty things start happening, they actually need help before then to stop them getting into those positions. Because the big companies certainly have that. They've got their in-house legal team, they've got all their risk management strategies, but the small businesses don't have it. Mm. So that's where I kind of came about. Mother Duck, Rise Legal, just really looking after those small business owners to hopefully keep them out of court. Best chance possible to keep them out of, costly disputes.
I think it's one of those things we often don't think about in business until it's far too late and we've found ourselves in some kind of dispute or some kind of trouble. And yet, if we do a little bit of legwork prior to finding ourselves in that position, often we can save a lot of heartache because we have the structure in place to ensure that we get the right advice at the right time, which is really important. Because often we are reactive as business owners and we've unknowingly stumbled into some trouble that somebody else might have to undo at a point in time. But also there are other professionals in the team that we require. And we often talk about we need fantastic lawyers and legal support. We need fantastic accountants. Of course, I'm going to toot my own horn and say we need good business coaches. We need good bookkeeping support. And we often need some sort of administration team so that we are able to do the work that is required to carry the business vehicle. And yet typically in trades, we don't do any of that until we either find ourselves in trouble or we listen to a podcast like this or we go to an education session that makes us aware that there's a team that we require as a business owner. And so unfortunately, we often go in as the tradesperson who just motors on out to do the job at hand and unfortunately finds themselves in some trouble. Helen, is it often that your conversations with trade business owners come about through trouble they've had previously, or are you able to get to them before they reach that point?
Look, through people like yourself, we get to your members before they reach that point, which is great. Really proactive accountants and business coaches actually see it as part of the overall risk mitigation strategy. Go and speak to Helen, and then we'll put a plan in place. Now, what happens often is people might come in off Google. Something's happened, they're owed money, or they've been served with some sort of nasty lawyer's papers, and they'll phone in. Now, we don't do that kind of work. We don't do dispute work. We don't go to court. But what I want to do is have a quick chat with them, because one, I can refer them to the right place. Yep. And two, I can actually say to them, look, it's a bit late for this one, but had you had this particular contract with these types of clauses in place, we wouldn't even be having this conversation now. So are you willing to make a one-off investment in your risk protection to carry on your business in the future? And often they'll say yes. And I'll say, right, well, let me put you in touch with such and such. I'll give them a call now. And then let's park this. And then a few weeks' time, I'll give you a call back and we'll talk about your contract or agreement or your terms and conditions. So even though they've got the problem, that then opens up this whole cavity for them of something they need to fill.
Yeah, it's a good point. One problem doesn't mean it needs to be that way ongoing. It can be fixed at that point. You can put the protection in place so that it's not an ongoing problem for you. Because unfortunately, just like in the trades, our clients get together and they chat, or we're working for those higher tier kind of projects or companies. And so they have their bits and pieces in place so that they're able to pull on what's required at any time. And unfortunately, generally, it's the tradesperson that ends up with the bill to pay at the end, or something to negotiate to try and find their way through.
Exactly. And they're the ones that can't, and if things go to court, and I don't go to court, so I don't understand the process like 100%, but my understanding is it's whoever's got the most money to throw at it. It's a bit like, show us your hand in poker. If you just can't, you have to fold. Yeah. My understanding is that, the small guy has to fold. Well, I don't want that, not for a family business, not for something that someone's put blood, sweat and tears into. And there's absolutely no need for it to have to get to that point. It should be dealt with in the contract. So I think out of pure frustration is probably where my legal came from, but there is a solution and I'm shouting it from the heavens and no one's listening to me. So I needed a platform so people could listen to me.
Yep. Well, absolutely. Okay. So we were going to talk today, and I really advise, if you don't have your terms and conditions in place, go and find Helen's episode over on Tradies and Business where we talk about T's and C's. It's very simple for you to put in place with support like Helen, so that you are able to be as protected as you can be moving forward. You're not getting yourself into one of these positions where you don't have that protection that you require, so you're not ending up in court forking over far too much money. Instead, please go and have a listen and reach out to Helen if she's able to support you there. What we're going to talk about today, Helen, is trademarking. Now, trademarking in my world, where we're very competitive, and now I actually start to think out what I'm about to say. It sounds quite trade-like, and very competitive in the trade business coaching space. So trademarking our business name and our program name happened very early for us, because many of us use similar words in our business names or our program names or our podcast names or books that we've written, etc. And so it was part of what we needed to do early on so that we could continue to feel safe in the space that we're working in, and none of our property was going to be threatened. And yet I reckon most trade business owners never ever think about why on earth they should have a trademark. So Helen, can you talk us through what is a trademark to start with, and why should a tradie, just a humble tradie, man in a van, just starting out business, why is it something they should even consider?
Yeah, really good question. So probably flip them on the reverse just slightly. So why should they consider it? Well, do you want somebody else using your business name? Is the simple answer. And if the answer to that is no, then you need a trademark, if you're able to trademark it, which I'll come to. But what a lot of people don't realize is that owning the business name from ASIC is a legal requirement. So you have to do that if you're not just using your own name. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't give you any proprietary rights to it. I do see in the groups sometimes, someone's stolen my name and, passing themselves off as me. And everyone goes, oh, speak to ASIC. ASIC will stop them. No, they won't. No, that's not their role. They're not policing the use of business names. But there is an act, the Trademarks Act. And if you seek the protection under the Trademarks Act by getting a registered trademark, then you can serve what they call a cease and desist, because somebody would then potentially be infringing your registered trademark, which is then a breach of the Trademarks Act. So it's against the law, basically. Mm-hmm. So a really good strategy is, and it's great that you did it from the beginning, so it should really be looked at by your branding people before you even decide on a brand, because it's not just, I know I wrote down here, you wanted to feel safe and that, you wanted to own the property and the property's not threatened. That's one side of it. The other side of it is that you don't want to be infringing somebody else's.
Very true.
There's a register sat there on a government website managed by IP Australia, and that's not something that, surprisingly, marketing companies and branding companies regularly check when they come up with this made up name. And so it should be part of the process because, like I say, you want to make sure that you can trademark your new business name. And you also want to make sure that no one else has already trademarked it. So what is a trademark? Essentially, it's not the right legal answer, but the answer is it's a proprietary right over, say, your business name or your logo or your brand. And it gives you the right to then protect it. It's giving you the protection rights. And you'll see after people's logos, I don't put it on mine, but TM is when you're registering and R is for the registered trademarks. If you see the R, someone has a registered trademark. But yeah, so it's one of the things that we put in our risk mitigation strategy. What we like to do with our new tradie clients is to have a legal audit with them and run through the main risk factors, being protection of your brand, terms and conditions with your clients, contractors agreements, contracts with your business partners. That's a big one. The courts are full of business partners. Yeah. And then your health and safety policies, etc. So those are sort of the 5 biggest risks. But the trademark one, really interesting. People think it's very sexy. It's a really cool, fun thing, isn't it, to have a trademark? Now, that's true also of the effect it has on the valuation of your business. My understanding from business valuers is it can add a considerable amount because, like you said, you've just protected a very valuable asset. So if you're going to come and revalue, maybe investors coming on board, or you want to sell, we're all in business to sell. It's actually a valuable thing to do.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And another point you made in there, Helen, was around the types of trademarks. So I think this could potentially blow people away. There are different types of trademarks. It's not just the business name that you can trademark, but I'm not going to talk about it because I'm not the expert in this area. Helen, can you explain to us the different types of trademarks and when they would be applicable specifically for a trade business owner?
Yeah. So a lot of people make the mistake of going and registering their logo. So they upload the JPEG of their logo from their marketing company and they register that. And they think, right, I've got a trademark, I'm fine. Someone else comes along and they're using, Zebedee Gardner, same thing. And you can't stop it unless they're then copying the logo. So the image, so for example, with the Rise Legal one that's up here, you'd have to copy, the words Rise Legal in that color and font inside that half circle straight wave. So it's to be substantially the same. What we always recommend is to register the name. So for example, I've registered Rise Legal. Then sort of when I gained more understanding, because that was really early on in the piece, that was about 12 years ago, gained more understanding of trademarks then and realized that didn't protect derivatives. So that would protect Rise Law, Rise Lawyers, because it's so substantially the same. But it wouldn't stop Rise Advisory, Rise Consultants, that kind of thing, Rise Professionals. So I then went and registered Rise. So no one can use the word Rise in their business name in professional services in Australia.
Wow.
Which is huge. And we've actually managed to successfully appeal to a few people who've tried to and just say we have a registered trademark and they just have to change their name.
Yeah. I have, this is totally unrelated to the trade space and I think it's a great example. I have a wonderful girlfriend who has a skincare company. And I won't say the names of the skincare company, but the original name of the business was very closely aligned to a major brand. And after they had been working within their company and establishing their brand for a period of time, they spoke to a lawyer who made them aware that it could in fact be a breach of their trademark. So very swiftly changed the name and are now very protected. But it was amazing to me to think of the immense cost to them to be able to make that shift at that point in time. They were lucky to do it early in the journey rather than now when they're very well established within the marketplace. That would be quite substantial. And I guess that's some of the stuff we need to be thinking about as a business owner. I do have a trade example. We have a tradie on the coast, not far from you actually, Helen, who has quite a generic electrical business name and it's utilised by somebody else in close proximity to them. And so therefore, he's often fielding calls. They're not the exact same business name and they're similar enough that it tricks a lot of people. He's often fielding calls from clients where this person has not shown up or there's an unpaid bill from a supplier or something similar. And it becomes quite a daily stress for him to be dealing with these continued phone calls. Now, he doesn't necessarily want to change his business name. I'm not sure about where he is on the trademarking opportunity for him and his business. And it does highlight just how massively it could be impacting your day-to-day without you even realizing you're tripping over something when you name your business.
Absolutely. We hear this all the time. A bad Google review pops up. They have no idea. They'll pop on. You know, you weren't a client of ours, and then there may be some communication outside of that. And they find out that there is this copycat firm who inevitably the copycat will not be producing the quality that you produce because, you know, they can't even come up with their own business name. Can they have proper systems and processes? No. So it can be really detrimental to the goodwill in your business as well. So it's almost the opposite of, you know, the trademark adds value. The lack of trademark could severely, devalue.
Absolutely.
You can trademark it, and it's hard to get a trademark. It's not easy. You need people who understand what they're doing before you put it in, because as soon as you put it in, it's a public register. So we need to make sure we're not going to infringe before we put one in. Mm-hmm. But we want to make sure there's 45 different classes of goods and services. So we want to make sure it goes in the right class, the right description in that class to stop what you're doing, but not be too wide as to be unreasonable. We want to protect the name rather than the logo if we can. But yeah, it can be, sometimes we don't get across the first hurdle. So, you know, for example, Gold Coast landscapers would be really hard to trademark. But yeah, if someone came to me and they've been using it for 40 years, I think we'd have a go, because then we could produce what we call evidence of use to show that we have been using it, we've developed goodwill in it. So there's quite a lot to trademarking. It's a big process. We've got, two of our team. We talked about them before, Lucy and Amy. They're our trademarks team. They'll stay on top of it. It can be up to 15 months process. But once you've got it, it's such a great way to protect a very, very valuable asset and to give you that peace of mind as well. So in that scenario, if this other person had just started with the new business name and it was quite new, we'd be able to serve quite a standard cease and desist on them. And they would have to rebrand the second one, as long as they came along after the trademark.
Are there any rules we should be aware of? So, you know, obviously with our kind of business name, we've tripped over some of those word-based rules that can be really quite complicated to understand before we even name our business. Is there just some basic things we should be aware of as maybe even newer businesses going into business, or businesses that are looking to rebrand, and perhaps that includes finding a new name for their business? Is there some stuff we should be looking at early?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously there's rules at ASIC, and ASIC won't let you register an illegal business name. So that's quite good. They already police that. You need to check the trademarks register. So on IP, so intellectual property, IP Australia, if you go onto their website, you can do a trademark search. So just pop in, derivative of the name. So I would have just popped in Rise, and then I'd try to narrow it down to like my class of goods and services. We actually do a brand check service. So anyone who's thinking about rebranding, or anyone who is starting out in business, we're very popular with marketing companies who now know that they need to use us for this, and even accounting firms, because they're the ones who, they go, what do you want to call your company? And you're like, oh, I'll call it, 721297. It's something really unique. Well, they just need to go and check.
Yep.
Really quick check. I'd be happy to, if I was able to share my screen another time, maybe I'll be able to jump on and just show you how to do it. But I'll shoot the link into, when this goes live, I'll put the link to where people can just go on and just check their own name. If there is another registered trademark in there, then I'd suggest you just give us a quick call and we'll just work through a strategy, because you don't want to have what you mentioned before with the request to rebrand. There's usually a request for damages as well. So not only have you got the cost of rebranding, then the other side they'll want to claim back their legal fees, and they'll also want to get something by way of, compensation for the fact that you use. And it starts around the $50,000 mark. These usually Melbourne trademark attorneys, they ask for their fees plus $50,000 in damages plus a rebrand on or before, and it's usually like the Friday of the week you get the letter.
Because we've all got that kind of money sitting in our bank account, just waiting for that letter to drop into our email inbox.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be quite devastating to a business, though, couldn't it? To be served some sort of papers like that, and even knowing what to do if that did eventuate. And unfortunately, sometimes it will, of course. Where do you go from there? There has to be some negotiation of that, of course. Is that something that you assist with as well, Helen?
Yeah, we can certainly assist with that kind of out of court settlement kind of thing. If there's a way in which two brands can exist together, for example, one might change all of its colouring and remove certain elements from its website and agree that it will never operate in XYZ. And, the two could work in conjunction, and that could be a good compromise. Sometimes we actually locate trademark owners for our clients and appeal to them and say, look, you're in the retail category, but our client sells supplements. So, would you be willing to allow our trademark through on the basis that we agree and in correspondence that we'll only do the sale of supplements? And we know you don't do that. So yeah, we'll get involved in those kind of practical solutions for people. There's only one that I have at the moment where it's going quite pear-shaped, and this is for a new client who contacted me, and I actually referred them over to a specialist trademark litigator, and I just keep in touch with it and just check in and just say, how's it going? And what we have here is a particularly aggressive UK company who've come over and completely copied the whole website and the whole business name. And to date, I understand that it's costing, the client who contacted me, the Australian client, is contacting them it's costing them in the region of 1.5 million in lost revenue.
Oh,
this is an e-commerce business.
Yep.
But the Australian government and the courts don't look very kindly on people coming from overseas and infringing our, we look after our own. So, I think after all the time and effort in the courts, I think they'll get a good result, but it's just a bit stressful in the process. So had we gone back 20 years and they had a trademark, none of this would have happened.
Is that something that you're seeing more frequently, Helen, given that, there's a lot of fear, I guess, in the marketplace at the moment around AI, etc. And so I do see in lots of groups, perhaps not so much trade-based stuff, and, it might start somewhere else and eventually hit the trades as well. Relying on that goodwill that a business has built means that often they are targeted then for a copy of that, whether it be just their website copy taken and reutilized, including brand names that are similar so that they give the same sort of impression and feel. Is that something you're seeing a lot of just at the minute?
Yeah, there's a lot more copycatting. So we're seeing websites being duplicated completely. We're seeing a lot happening in the social media space. So you could set up an Instagram page, you could call it Rise Legal, you could start driving everybody. And of course, then you've got the contact us, but no one needs to go to the official website. They get contact you, speak to you and engage you just using social media platforms. So it's quite right. And you need to keep on top of it. Like if you do get a trademark as well, you just need to make it part of your process to just Google yourself. That's right. Everyone could do. Just go and Google yourself and see what pops up. That's how we actually found one of our perpetrators.
Wow.
One of our staff who was in Melbourne actually Googled because she wanted to get the address off the website. And one came up and she thought, this doesn't look right. And then she screenshot it and sent it to me. And we were like, oh my goodness, gone completely under the radar. I'd only set up like a few months before. So we were quick to pounce. It wouldn't have cost him too much to rebrand. So again, I don't like to damage small businesses, but that's my brand. So yeah, two pieces of homework. Google yourself and see what comes up. Just make sure it's all your stuff. And then go on the IP Australia website and just do a trademark search and make sure that you're not actually infringing someone else's. And then by all means, get in touch with us and we can tell you whether we think yours is likely to be successful as a trademark.
Helen, we've spoken a lot about the do's. Are there any don'ts when it comes to trademarking?
Yes. If you do find that you are infringing somebody else's, speak to a lawyer before you reach out to that person. Because you're literally going to stand there and say, I'm infringing your trademark. So if you go to put your own trademark application, it's public register, so that will notify them. If you contact them, via LinkedIn or another platform and say, can we have a chat? Looks like we're both using the same name. You've literally just stopped yourself in. Mm-hmm. Just be really careful if you are the infringer to seek proper legal advice before you do anything public.
Fantastic. Is there anything else we need to know about trademarking?
It's a pretty awesome process. I mean, it's as far as legal protections go, it's an exciting one. Like we are, I get quite jealous of Lucy and Amy because they'll go into the portal and go, oh, we've had another great result, and it's all high fives, and it's really exciting for us to be able to email the client and say you've got a trademark because we know that we've just, increased the value of their business and we've just protected it with so many layers of bubble wrap. So I just definitely think it's worth looking into. It's not that expensive. A lot of people get confused with patents. These things you see on Dragon's Den, and it's called Shark Tank here, isn't it? Things you see on Shark Tank, and they go, oh, I spent $30,000 on a patent. Well, that's about like a widget in a piece of machinery or in an app. This is just your brand name being trademarked. So, give you an example: registration fees are currently $330 per trademark per class, and it lasts for 10 years. So registration fees are $33 a year, and then legal fees on top of that.
It's quite a reasonable process, particularly then when you balance it out against the risk. It's most definitely a very reasonable process.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you'd pay those, very, very clever trademark attorneys quite a sizable amount of money to defend your use of a business that you didn't know was trademark. Like, the cost just completely outweighs.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you, Helen. Where can our listeners find out more about you and the services that you do offer?
Wow. Well, I'm always hanging around on Facebook. So if you want to just jump onto the website, riselegal.com.au. We have a chat box, which we're very proud of, talking about AI. So you can ask questions in the chat bot and you'll get a real-time answer based on, what we've uploaded into the chat bot. You can also book a free call in with me on that website. And I know your members as well over at Tradies in Business do get a sort of dedicated members call with us. So by whatever platform, just reach out to us.
Wonderful. Thank you, Helen. That was really interesting.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure.